Yeah, we are. We are on. Jen Cuttance, welcome to the Luke Farr Show, a show to motivate, educate, and inspire our next generation of leaders. I'm glad I haven't forgotten how to say that. That's great. It's great to be back. First interview of the year, and wow, what a guest. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. That feels like quite a dramatic introduction for me.
Does it sound like the Oscars?
Yeah, I was like, oh, better thank you know.
yeah. Ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, okay, anyway. But no, thank you for coming on. It was great to read your article in the In-Flight magazine of Air New Zealand. Effectively, that great branding for you, and I'm sure you're now getting stopped in the street asking, wow, is that you from the magazine? But you'll be surprised how many people read that, though, hey?
Yeah, it's got the most readership of all magazines in the country, I believe, which is kind of amazing. I definitely had all my family letting me know that they'd seen it if they were flying, and different friends, so that was cool. Yeah,
well, that's good. Do you know the exact number? It would be, yeah, I can imagine it. I mean, because they do so many flights, and if that magazine, so they do one every month, or is it every quarter?
Every month, and I think it's 460,000 people see it to 800,000.
Eesh.
Yeah, and then there's the digital. I think there's a digital part that gets sent out to their frequent flyers. That's like 1.3 million. But I mean,
wow,
it's kind of amazing.
That's crazy reach. Yeah, you're starting to give Joe Rogan's audience a run for his money. Yeah. Very good. But yeah, thank you for joining. Look forward to the conversation in this interview. I guess let's start with a little bit of background around you. You've got, quite a few accolades there as far as your qualifications: Australia Institute of Fitness, your Masters in Personal Training Certificate 3, 5, your IYTA Yoga Diploma, REPS Registered Fitness Professional, IYTA International Yogas Association membership, and then highly trained in the likes of TX training, things like that, functional strength and core conditioning fitness. I mean, yeah, just off the bat, like, where did your journey start with the health and well-being sector? Like, was there a specific turning point or catalyst that triggered it? Or
I've always been into wellness and been interested in yoga, and I was a real sports kid. So did lots of gymnastics and netball and just anything sporty I was super into. So the movement part for me has always been there. But I guess we know a lot more about it now. As a child, I was probably actually really anxious, and that's why I needed to move all the time, was because I wasn't given the tools on how to slow things down. And so that's where I guess my, it's actually funny. Well, it's not funny. This is not a funny story. I had very bad anxiety.
Pretty funny though, the way you're delivering it.
With a smile, does that make it funny? No, so really bad anxiety and depression in my early 20s. And those were things that people never really spoke about in my time. The word anxiety, people just didn't even say that. Like, that just wasn't something you spoke about. And it started to affect my sleep. There was a lot going on. And my mum actually said, why don't you listen to this Yoga Nidra CD? This is a CD. This is how long ago we're talking. And so Yoga Nidra is the practice I now teach a lot, which is a guided relaxation to help you to calm the physical body, but also to calm the mental body down as well. That monkey mind, being able to enter a lot easier. And it helps you to sleep and gives you a massive amount of recovery. So me, I went and got traditional therapy, so I highly recommend that, with a great psychologist at that time. And then I listened to this Yoga Nidra CD every day. And slowly over time, I found myself getting really strong mentally. And so it was a long while before I actually studied yoga after that. But I started practicing the physical practice as well. But I found the Yoga Nidra, which is lying down relaxation, guided relaxation, to be the thing that really helped me to become strong and get, I guess, more interested in the space.
Yeah, fantastic. Was there anything specifically that triggered the anxiety and depression way back then, or?
Yeah, I just had my family had a breakup when we were, and I think I was 14. And often they say that the effects of that can turn up in your early 20s. So that's what had happened to me. Also, not the only effect. You can be quite angry as a teenager, which apparently is a sign of depression, but it gets missed because you just think, oh, it's just, teenagers. Why is this happening for that person? But again, in those days, those conversations weren't really flowing like they do so much today. So yeah, it was more, that was the catalyst, was our family is dysfunctional and great now. It was a moment of abandonment in my life, and anyone who's ever experienced abandonment, whether that's through a parent not being there, someone leaving, or someone passing away, you carry that trauma, through your life, and it gets out into your relationships and everything as well. So that's what triggered the anxiety and the depression, but it also triggered the passion for trying to get well. I can see the big picture now, and maybe at times then I could see that this was for some bigger purpose. Of that. So yeah, that's what. Yeah,
extremely relatable. That's interesting. I was the exact same age, 14, 15, when my parents split up. Although not so much the abandonment, more the abandonment feeling, but I mean, mum and dad were still there for me, although they went their separate ways and were with different partners, and the whole family home dynamic changed. But very much relatable, because that was the first time I experienced anxiety and panic attacks, and I was like, what's going on? I think I'm dying. Like, thought it was a heart attack. But yeah, it leads you into a life of strength and resilience and troubleshooting, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what it's about, right? That we don't evolve or transform unless we experience adversity. How we're wired, and it sucks, but we kind of don't do enough if we don't get these other experiences in for us to learn and grow from. So it's not like I feel like hard done by from the experience at all. I would have at a time, but then you think these are the things that helped, form and shape what you were, who you are, and what you were going to become. So, and with that, like, you can understand someone who's had a similar experience. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I probably have a newfound perception on the quote unquote Cinderella forever after love. but apart from that, I'm still sort of circling back and dealing with that and going, no, you can find forever love. Yeah. I mean, and in all fairness, I mean, really, when you break down the comparison of how long, marriages or relationships are lasting in this day and age versus back then, I mean, they still had a very successful 25 years, and that's a big tick, and hats off to them, and that's great. So,
yeah, totally. That's a good way to look at it too.
As you get older, you start to realize. Yeah, I guess it's hard at that age. At 15, your prefrontal cortex or your adult brain's not even fully developed, and all you're thinking about is just, it's all about me, and I. Like, you've left me, and your world does crumble at that point. But as soon as you start to get older and realize and understand, you've pieced the puzzle together and understand and say, oh, that's plausible and acceptable, and yeah, we're humans that can fall in and out of love. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, well, that makes a good premise to kickstart the show. I want to whip back in a little bit about what you're doing in the past, which is very fascinating, and I want to understand how all that came about. I mean, you've worked with members of the royal family during your time in Oman in the Middle East. I mean, what was that experience like, and how did that come about? That's not your everyday story.
It's very serendipitous how that all came about, and Oman feels to me like my home away from home. I have such good friends there. I found a real sisterhood up there. You know, I really discovered feminism when I was there, which might sound funny to people that don't know too much about the Middle East, but yeah, I learned how to set boundaries and be stronger actually from being there. So it's very dear to me in my heart. It's one of those things, you know, when you have an old friend who you haven't seen in ages and then you catch up with them, it's like no time has passed. That's what my Omani friends, family feels like. So they're very welcoming and pull you in, which I really loved when I was up there, and they're very spiritual people. I really loved as well. There's always a deeper connection, conversation always going on about what's happening for each other. But to go back to how I ended up there was, I know this is like another life now.
And we're going down the rabbit hole.
Ex-partner used to have a bar in Hamilton, and he had this guy come in one day who is student studying at IYTA University, and they got on really well, and he said to me, I've met this guy and you should hang out. I reckon you guys would be really good friends. And so I connected with our friend, his name's Nasser, but I'd say Nasser, which is a very Kiwi way to say it. And so we got on. We were all just friends. You know, we would go to like spin classes, and you know, he would come visit my mum with me and crash out on her couch. You know, it was all very just natural and like family immediately. And so my ex-partner and I flew up to Oman to visit his country, because he said, oh, why don't you come up and check this out? Long story short, our friend who had been our friend for 2 years didn't mention that he was HRH, which is His Royal Highness. And we found out that he was in the royal family of Oman. Omanis are very private, and it was kind of amazing to just be down here and be incognito and just have the whole life. And then we went up there, and there was all this importance around him and his family and many of his friends. So we kind of ended up in this space visiting, and then Nasser was like, I finished my studies, why don't you come up here and live here and start some passion projects and start working up there? And so so I think I was 26 at the time, and we just thought, let's go on an adventure, you know, why not? And we didn't really know anything, and then just went there. So this is to put, like, I know that story sounds funny to not know who he was, but this is before Facebook was used to stalk people. Facebook at the time, I think, was more of a dating app. It was more like Tinder or something than actually like, oh, let's find out who this person is. That didn't exist. And so there was this very authentic shock of who he was, and it was a cool experience. So we flew up there, moved up there, and again, another long story short, I say that even though the story's long. I ended up, because I trained at this.
The long caller.
I ended up training in personal training in Australia and yoga while I was up there, and back in New Zealand as well. I did a long degree in yoga because I was really interested in the philosophy. But yeah, because of who Nasser knew, then of course I ended up being introduced to, you know, these high profile clients and other members of their royal family. And so I ended up training them but had my own business independently. So usually when you go up to the Middle East, in my industry as a personal trainer or a yoga instructor, you may work for one family, is often the case. So you'll live with that family and be their personal trainer and yoga instructor. But because of who I had met and was introduced to up there, and then I could run my own business and have many different clients, which was great.
Well, also fascinating. As far as you just touched on feminism earlier in our conversation, I mean, what was your perception and experience with feminism before you went over to the Middle East versus after?
Well, I sort of feel like, again, in that time in New Zealand, it was sort of almost a joked about kind of energy, like, oh, it's almost an insult if someone's a feminist. Oh, they're a feminist almost, was what I was experiencing when I was in New Zealand. And when I went up to Oman, the women are really keen on getting educated, and really they hold themselves in just very strong, and they have a lot of self-worth. And I didn't see the self-worth so much down here. I saw, binge drinking and, that kind of thing. That's how everyone was dealing with their anxiety, which doesn't work.
Oh, well aware of that one. No, pour gasoline on the anxiety.
So I guess it was more the culture of here was heavy drinking, impressing everyone else except taking care of yourself. There was this disconnect happening there for me. And, I'm sure there's lots of people in New Zealand who weren't doing that. But in my world at that time, that's what I was surrounded by. And then when I went up to Oman, people would take things a bit more, not so much seriously, but just be more proud of what they're doing. I met one of I think she was the first female lawyer in Oman. She's Palestinian. She's a real boss. And I was like, wow. So, like, meeting these people, and they're just, it's inspiring. The women are really inspiring. And when things aren't going well for you, there's a real sense of community. Everyone checks in on you, sends you food. Oh my gosh, sends you food. Like, you're not
that you would have needed that. I mean, if you're living in with the royal, I'm sure the food would have been plentiful.
No, there was definitely a lot of food. It's amazing. But I guess I didn't know. Well, I think for our perception at that time was more this blanket idea of what the Middle East is, and it's just so inaccurate. And of course, just what we've been fed through different media, and my experience, which is a real experience, is what I saw is a lot of love, community, and just the spirituality I really loved as well.
Did you see every aspects of society there, and not just the quote unquote kind of Lamborghini culture that you were embedded in based on, training or when living in with the royals? You got a healthy view and perspective of the whole of it.
Yeah. So I think most expats that were there would experience, the different parts, because you do travel like into the desert and go camping, and there's Bedouin, and so the Bedouin are amazing, and they're still very traditional, and it's just, Oman's very unique. It hasn't lost its essence of tradition and beauty. It's
Would it be fair to say, like, majority of the people there, the natives are very spiritual and open and mindful and very approachable, especially to expats?
Definitely, definitely. Omanis are like, I always say this, they're like the islanders of the Middle East, like how, you know what it's like, how everyone's just so welcoming and you feel people are present with you. And so they're very similar. Omanis are very similar to that, yeah.
Oh, wow. What an experience. Sheesh. And so you wrapped up there, you came back to New Zealand and thought, right, let's get into the weeds with the Ponsonby socialite crew. what a contrast.
Yeah, totally. And actually total different issues with the body. It was really, really pronounced in terms of, I think because in Oman, you can sit on the ground, eat your food, you know, it's not, you know, if you're praying, you can go down into a squat, come up, stand. You know, you would have seen in Islamic prayer when they're moving this way. So they really don't have any issues as intensely like with their hips and that sort of thing. But here, everyone, it's like the first thing you have to address is what's happening with the glutes and hips, and because I guess we're sitting on chairs and we're not doing those full body movements all the time. Quite interesting. Yeah.
Very, very, very sedentary in the Western world versus over there, I would imagine.
Well, actually, it's sedentary there too, because they don't. If you're not dedicating the time to move, like a workout in the gym, you don't get the extra like walking from point A to point B because it's too hot. You know,
right? Okay.
In some suburbs, they won't have footpaths, so.
Oh, right. Well, yes. See, isn't that interesting? My perception of that was, inherently false, but I thought they would do a lot of walking and moving around.
They do, but it's not the same as like if you're in London and you're catching a train. You know,
yeah.
Those little parts aren't as accessible. That meant walking, you know, to the bus or to the train or, you know, yeah.
Very fascinating. Hey, let's dig into the yoga aspect. As you're well aware, I mean, yoga originated in India over 5,000 years ago, and yoga teachers around the world are prolific. In your experience, Jen, I mean, how would one go? Let's say, for example, myself, so I wanted to go and become a yoga teacher. What's involved? How long does it take? And what are the costs?
I think the first thing is to try different yoga styles yourself and go to different classes. So there's different styles of yoga, like Iyengar yoga, vinyasa. You know, you're going to try different things, Ashtanga, and see what resonates for you. I have practiced all of them. I started with Iyengar yoga, and I really think that helped me with understanding where my body was in the position, because Iyengar is holding poses for longer periods of time. So it would be find what is calling to you.
I have a feeling vinyasa would call to me, yeah.
Vinyasa is the flow.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's say the vinyasa, I just felt a grip on that, and then the next steps, obviously I've got to get a certain amount of hours under the vinyasa, is that right? And then what are we looking at cost-wise? You know, this is obviously for my youthful audience out there. They're sort of coming out of uni. One might want to go down the trajectory path of becoming a yoga teacher.
Yeah, well, usually I know in New Zealand, if you're in New Zealand or Australia, you can speak with where you go to your yoga practice, and most of them will take a yoga teacher training there. So Sala in Auckland, they do a really good training, and they cover like a really good umbrella because it's such a big topic. You know, it's not just the movement. There's just so many. There's 8 parts to that you have to dive into. And I think Sala do a nice round. Nikki Ralston does an amazing teacher training as well. Kylie Rook. There's people out there that do really great training courses, and they seem to be around about the 6-week mark. And I'm not sure like how much they would cost, because I couldn't give you that quote exactly, but I know people go to like Thailand and do, say, or Bali, and maybe it's $5,000 to do this amount of training or this amount of hours. For me, because I'd already done the personal training, I wanted to dive deeper into the philosophy and the inner workings of what yoga means. And so I did a 2-year diploma, which was a lot of written text. And and I really enjoyed that. That is a non-profit. IYTA, International Yoga Teachers Association. So the money that is put up, I think, for the whole 2 years is $2,000, but it might be more now. And that just will go to timing, like paying for some of the teachers' times that are teaching you. And I really like that. The money goes back into, not to the teachers, to other students as well.
Right. Fantastic. Sounds like a great model. When I see RT, when it says 2,000 in RT, is that registered training or registered time, or what does the RT stand for?
I think that's registered time. We didn't do hours with mine, but it might be registered time. Yeah.
Gotcha, right. So every class you take, even after you've got your certificate, you're always jotting that down. So therefore, like that's where you see like 8,000 RT, or not? Does it work like that or not?
I don't think that you need to do that, but after you've done the training, it just shows how many hours you've put in to the practice.
Right.
I think there's shorter programs like 200 and 500. That's usually all you would see. I don't think you need to record what you've done after that. It's just like in reference to I think maybe if it was a 6-week course or if it was 3 months or Yeah,
no, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, if you've been doing it 30 years, you're not expected to keep that jotting down the duration in the journal, are you? That makes sense. And in your opinion, what's the number one benefit, Jen, for the mind, body, and soul that one recognises from doing regular yoga?
The number one benefit is just to get to know who you are.
Oh, that's powerful. That's deep. I wasn't expecting an answer like that. I was thinking something mental or physical. Oh, that is mental, but wow. Okay. Yeah, really getting to know thyself.
Yeah, in yoga, it's a Sanskrit word that means union. And so it's being like all those facets of yourself together. So thinking about the physical, emotional, mental, and energetic bodies. And it's building a relationship with those parts of yourself, and through movement, through breath, through stillness is how we get there.
Yeah, the Māoris call that the haora well-being. I think that's what it is. Yeah, haora. Yeah, spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional.
Is it Wairua? No, that's I thought that's what that was, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure how. I'm probably. I'd please forgive me on my today. Yeah, haora. Anyway, moving swiftly along. When it comes to, so like when you say the biggest benefits knowing thyself. So there must be such a journey with that for people that are obviously going through a lot of healing and a lot of learning about themselves and breaking down those walls and limiting beliefs, etc. I mean, there must be, I would imagine, quite a few emotional releases through this yoga training. In fact, I need to get my hours up. I think this would benefit not only me, but the viewers out there a lot.
Yeah, it really is something that benefits everyone. And I think there can be a bit of a block in terms of, I'm not flexible, so I can't do it. Is that block? There's different ways to do yoga. The yoga nidra that I teach, you just lie down. There's no movement.
That sounds ideal. Yeah, I'm like a year post tibia plateau knee reconstruction surgery, so that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it's really great. And it's a meditative practice for deep relaxation and healing. And there's different things that yoga offers that you can do. Maybe it's the philosophy, maybe it's breath work, which is like for me, that is the number one thing that everyone needs to get into is breath work. So breath work, just meaning ways to manipulate the breath, pranayama, we call it in yoga. So it's about harnessing life force. So I think, with yoga, it is for everyone. It's just knowing which is going to work best for you.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. Yeah, speaking of the breathwork, I had is it I think it's Stephen Hall. Have you heard of Inner Oasis?
No.
Stephen Hall, but that was a very fascinating interview about all facets of breathing. Yes, it's so much to unpack. It's not as simple as the everyday Joe Blow thinks. So it's like, oh, well, it all just happens naturally, but you'd be so pleasantly surprised how many people are breathing incorrectly, huh?
Yeah, and it affects the whole body. So people might be presenting with a tight neck and they think, oh, I've slept funny, but it's you're not breathing properly, or lots of that sort of thing. I see you just moved your neck then. Just like,
well, yeah, I mean, you're bringing up the topic. I'm like, geez, maybe I'm not breathing. No. Yeah, no, I definitely would be. I mean, because I've obviously still got that low-level anxiety and from the sensitive amygdala from way back in the day. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a panic attack in years, but yeah, that still is carried within. And yeah, I know when I'm fully out, not breathing incorrectly, like I'm doing more sort of. At the moment, I'm probably doing quite a bit of diaphragmatic, like currently right now in this present moment. But if I'm like going to do a big presentation to the boardroom or I don't know, I would be like, oh, I'm upper chest breathing, and then I'll try and snap out of it, which actually leads me to my next question I want to ask you about. I mean, how quickly can the body return to the parasympathetic nervous system? This is someone like you who's got all the tools. And so hypothetically, if we put you in that situation to talk about that is triggering a fight-flight response, what are some of the techniques you do to quickly revert back into that parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest and relax state? And that's if you don't have a room to escape to, or you're on your own. You literally, you could be on public transport, you could be on an airplane, you could be in a tight claustrophobic elevator, like. What are things you can do around people where you're not looking like a sort of nutter?
Totally. And speaking to the airplane and the travel, I used to get anxious about like being on a flight or traveling on my own. And that's why I really, really incorporated this particular breath called the Ujjayi breath. This breath you can't do in the boardroom because it's a sound. On a plane or in the airport.
You'll be pleasantly surprised what sounds go on in the boardroom.
A way to elongate. Yeah, it's a way to elongate the in-breath and the out-breath. And so you close the back of your throat gently, and it's like you're going to fog up a mirror, like the sound, but you close your mouth and you breathe. And I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, and I've seen this before. Friend Jock Barnes has done it. And then you do the. Do you do multiple or just no?
Just an in-breath, out-breath, and it sounds like Darth Vader. That's the kind of energy you're giving is Darth Vader sound, which is.
Also, closed mouth at all times.
Yeah, it'll make the breath long. And you got to make that sound. And then it's something to practice. So there's that breath. If you're in a board meeting and you feel really out of your body and you're in the spot, people use the term belly breathing, but the best cue for that is to relax your stomach. And when you take a breath in, open up the rib cage. So remember, the ribs are not just at the front, but the back of the body. And when you do that, relax the stomach. you get a bigger breath. And we know that breath,
I mean, that to me sounds so challenging when you said just open up the rib cage. Like, how would one go about doing that? I just tried to do it. How would you open it? That's very challenging to do, isn't it?
breathe out this direction. You can put your hands on your ribs like that. And then think about pushing your hands this outward as you breathe in.
Oh, like naturally they do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
organically. Yeah, right. So you're saying accentuate it.
Just focus on it. Your body will do it. But if you bring your awareness to it, it will create a deeper breath. Because I used to think, oh, deep belly breathing, I almost felt like I thought my belly was below my belly button and I couldn't get it to reach there. Do you know what I mean? Like that was sort of, I always that like it couldn't, that's too low or something. Obviously that's not what they mean by belly breath, but I find if you relax the stomach and take a breath, it's hard to relax the stomach too when you're stressed.
Oh, it is. And also like, because I've tried with certain practitioners and things, and every time we go to attempt to do a session, I just get so in my head, and I'm sort of like, and I'm overthinking it almost, because in my head I go, hang on, shouldn't we just be like a little baby and just naturally breathe diaphragmatically without thinking about what we're doing? It's kind of like a bit of a conundrum for me.
When I have a client like this, I would start the breath with, are you familiar with cat-cow, the movement cat-cow, when you're on all fours? And you breathe in, drop the belly to the floor, breathe out as you round the back. And so movement with the breath, and then that feels easier to do.
Oh, right. Very good. Sheesh, I think you might have acquired a new client here, potentially. Do you do online sessions?
I have clients in America and Australia and different parts of New Zealand. Obviously in the COVID, I know it was awful, but it really opened up the online space for me. And, you know, I could train my clients back in Oman over COVID, and that sort of on. And lots of yoga nidra online, lots of the style of stretching I think you read about in the article, or the style of movement that I created called the bare minimal. And it is the bare minimal in movement and meditation for relief and relaxation. So it's just through the many years of my experience creating stretches that really serve the body and allow you to release tension before we go into breath work and then go into a yoga nidra guided relaxation practice.
Fantastic. How effective do you find alternative nostril breathing or the box breathing?
Alternative nostril breathing is my favorite, I think.
Oh yeah, okay.
My favorite breath.
That's the only one I could semi-master.
It's easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's important. It's so, I know, it's so important. I do that breath every day.
Yeah, see, that one I do in the boardroom.
Would you'll find this?
No, I don't. But
oh, what I was going to say about the boardroom too. If you're a visual person, you can also just visualize yourself. This is going to sound playful, and it is. Visualize yourself like you're a tree, and you've got roots growing out from your feet. They're going deep into the earth, and you're grounded. And that is an energetic grounding technique, because often when you're in the boardroom or getting nervous, it's just more because you've got so many things that you want to grab to get out and do, and many things to think about. And that is a sign that you're become ungrounded. So visualization, hopefully that can help people. It definitely helps me.
Yeah, great. That's certainly achievable for everyone. So just visualize you're a tree and that your feet are roots that are grounded on the ground.
Deep into the earth. Big, tall, strong tree.
And your arms are the branches, I would imagine, and then the fingers could be more branches.
Yeah.
Or is that going a bit too far? It's not.
Imagination is super important, and when we tap into that, there's this, like I was saying, this sort of playful side that's really important. Yeah. So it's a nice technique to do for that. Yeah.
Well, in that case, my fingernails are the leaves. There we have it.
There you go. You've got to be sorted.
I do. Yeah. I'm just wondering where. Oh, actually, and that makes sense because in the boardroom there's always water because trees need water to survive.
It's the whole environment up here.
See, I'm very, very playful. Very good. Hey, Jen Cuttance, that is all we've got time for today. Sheesh, we need to get you on a longer podcast. We could go down many different rabbit holes, but I do want to thank you for coming on the Luke Farr Show to motivate, educate, and inspire our next generation of leaders, and you've certainly done that. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been awesome. I'll just hit stop record.